Hi, I'm Jo, the creative director at Take Two, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gundungurra people, the traditional owners of the land where I'm recording from today. From her studio in Calgary, Canada, textile artist Simone Elizabeth Saunders creates vivid, punch-needled tapestries built from colour, symbolism and story, drawing on Renaissance painting, Art Nouveau, Black womanhood, mythology, and her Jamaican, African, and Austrian roots. And then there are the details that really stay with you: unicorns, halos, shimmering metallic threads, and women who meet your gaze with quiet strength. Always there's intention, each loop of yarn placed with care, each gesture carrying a deeper lineage. Simone is deeply committed to honouring her ancestors, uplifting Black identity, and creating work that allows others to feel seen. In our conversation, we also spoke about her theatrical beginnings, her research process, and the significance of rest in sustaining a creative life. I was deeply inspired by this conversation, and I really hope you are too. And if so, we'd be honoured if you'd share it with a friend or leave us a review. Let's dive in. Hi, Simone. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview. How are you today?
Oh my goodness, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I am so good. It's November here and we don't have snow yet. I don't know what is happening. Maybe global warming, of course, but everything is good.
That's lovely to hear. I guess in Canada you're hanging on to the warm weather as long as you possibly can, right?
Absolutely. Although, you know what, there's something really beautiful about winter time and hibernating and really thinking about introspection and
Yeah.
regrowth. So I love winter.
Yeah.
I love all the
Yeah.
seasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I think on the flip side of the planet, I'm south of Sydney. We were supposed to have a chill or a frost this week in November. I live in a cooler climate in Australia, but still, that's quite something. So
Wow.
maybe we're hanging on to your cold weather, and we'll pass it on to you soon.
Okay. Okay. We're ready. We're ready.
We're ready.
November. Yes.
I'm the same. I love the seasons and um, trying to embrace all the positives that each season brings. Yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
what's your day looked like today? What did you get up to?
Oh my goodness. My day was really quite relaxing. I woke up and I had a phone call with a friend who lives in BC. She's a curator. And I went to the gym. I'm 5 months pregnant, so I want to keep my strength up.
Yeah.
And went and pitter-pattered around the gym, had some lunch, and now we're here.
Now we are here.
Mhm.
Well, welcome. Thanks again. We're broadcasting this episode on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll also be dropping the episode as a podcast. So, for those who are listening, perhaps you're driving or doing some chores, or hopefully sitting at a sewing machine or doing some stitching or doing some making of some sort. I highly recommend you check out the episode description. We'll link to the show notes and there'll be a slideshow of the beautiful artwork that we'll be discussing with Simone today.
Thank you.
But in that in that regard, Simone, for those who haven't seen your work or those who are listening in, how would you actually describe it, physically describe your work?
I primarily work with portraiture. I'm a mixed race Black woman, so all of my portraiture uplifts Black womanhood, our resilience, our strength, and I love color. I love what color can emote, the narrative that it can transform from what I'm trying to say. And so I put a lot of research into my works. They're really large, punch needled tapestries, they're hand punched. They're on average 65 inches squared, and they really talk a lot about womanhood. I dive into historical artistic eras like the Renaissance or Art Nouveau, and I bring within that um, the essence of Black women and our joy. So that
Yeah.
I think is an antithesis of my work.
That's such a beautiful description. Thank you. And of course, we'll look at some of these artworks. Um, but first, I understand you trained in two fields, performance as well as fiber arts, um, which I think is just fabulous because both are so expressive and
Mm.
they both use the body in their, the making or the performance. And I'm going to bring up an image. And before I ask the question, I would love you just to describe this particular image called Release in Darkness.
Of course, this is the first tapestry of a set of four of my series called Virtue and the Chronicles of the Unicorn, which is based off of The Hunt of the Unicorn, a historical set of tapestries from the 15th century. And so this piece itself is very reminiscent of the unicorn tapestry itself, where the unicorn has been chained to the pomegranate tree for years. Pomegranates are symbolic of wealth and fertility. And in the backdrop there, you can see a castle that is a monastery. There's monks holding fire. They're guarding the monastery and the grounds. Um, the unicorn itself is in an enclosure, a very tight enclosure tied to the pomegranate tree with the fence around it. And that historically is called the Hortus Conclucus, which is related to the Virgin Mary. And so around it are many white and red roses, very symbolic of the Virgin Mary. And for me, I took my virtue, my heroine, whose name is Virtue, phonetically spelled of the word virtue. And
Mhm.
she is my black heroine who has come swept into the night. You see a full moon with a starry night sky in the background. And she is there with her arm extended, ready to release our unicorn from all of the strife. And so, historically, this tale of the hunt of the unicorn is symbolic of Christ. And for me, not being, I'm a very spiritual person. And so there's a lot more context for me about the release of this magical, mysterious beast that we've all at some point have
Mm.
loved within our childhood or somewhere, in our journey. And so the release of just this magical, majestic creature from a Black woman, and the tale moves forward through my pieces, through the journey of the day, and she ends up in the oasis, in a very tropical oasis with a plethora of beautiful animals around her, reminiscent of freedom and
Amazing.
liberation.
I mean, just listening to you describe your work, it's such a pleasure, and there's so much joy and power in the way you describe the color and the imagery. Um, and I'll show the rest of the series in a moment. But for me, I could really see, and I'll bring the image up again, I could see such a connection between your background in performance and theatre as well as the fibre art. This looks like, to me, a stage, and the lights have gone down and there's a spotlight, and you even used the word backdrop just now. But that's my interpretation. Those are threads that I'm connecting together about what I know of you as an artist. And I'd love to know, in the development of your work and the imagery that you consider, is that how performance and your theatrical interest comes into play, or is there something else that brings those two worlds together for you?
It's absolutely that. I think within my journey in the theater world, I had the opportunity to have the different facets of the theater world, doing set design, writing, directing, and acting. And so for me, moving that skill set forward into my visual arts career is integral because it's a part of who I am. And in terms of storytelling, and to be able to give that emotion, and for the viewer to be able to really stand in front of the work and engage with it, and to see the power of storytelling in this stationary, tactile, visual art piece is very meaningful to me to be able to have that background in acting and direction. And so yes, setting of the stage and the background is very important to me. It's integral
Yeah.
to building these textiles.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the rest of Virtue's journey with her beautiful unicorn.
Yes.
You said they were different parts of the day. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So here we have sunrise, and
Mm-hmm.
she has released the unicorn. You can see her arm is outstretched with the chain in her hand and that iconic collar that has been around the unicorn's neck for centuries, tied to the tree. And
Yeah.
you can see the trees on the horizon, the crows kind of, you know, ascending from the ruckus that she's making, leaving this landscape, and even the dogs that previous in Release into Darkness were sleeping on the horizon, and now you can see them chasing the unicorn. But the expression on their faces is one of joy. I feel like they are elated and running with the unicorn, not to chase down the unicorn. And so this, with the vibrancy of the reds and the orange and the passion of that fiery sky, to me is also very emotive of this release that this
Yeah.
unicorn has had, having been in bondage for so
Yeah.
long. And for me, it really speaks to my ongoing vie for liberation of Black peoples and
Mhm.
equality and the coming together of the Black diaspora. And so
Mhm.
for me, this piece is really meaningful. And
Yeah.
I also take a lot in the foliage, the landscape. So the flowers in
Mhm.
Release in Darkness, and also the ones that are in here, are very specific flowers that are from the unicorn tapestries themselves.
Yeah.
You have crocus there. And I was able to go to New York to the Met, the Cloister Museums up in the Bronx, and to see these tapestries in real life. And they are just so overwhelmingly beautiful to see the maker's hands, and where the sun has degraded the fibers and where it has been,
Mm.
stored in sheds on top of
Yeah.
potatoes for many years. And then it's had to be refinished and redone by professionals. It was really incredible to
Mm.
take part, to see it in real life.
Yeah. Here we have affirmation of the day, which is a beautiful image of the unicorn and Virtue in front, looking into I guess, a pond with the
Hmm.
waterfall and incredible nature behind.
Yeah, this one really speaks to serenity and to rest. And I think, especially as Black women, to um, give oneself the opportunity to rest. And I
Mhm.
think even in society, as women in general, we're just constantly feeling this urge to be busy, to fulfill our days. And, I think it's really important to replenish and to find rest. And you can see with the bow of the unicorn's head, and she's
Yeah.
reaching into the water, she's found a mother of pearl. And the
Wow.
animals that even are around are so restful and at peace. Even a tiger who is, so predatory, that could be leering after the unicorn and the buck on the horizon, it could, they're all at peace. And if you
Yeah.
look at the very top, you can see some tribes people up on
Mhm.
the very top of the cliff where the waterfall is cascading down. And so that to me just shows that they are in a different land, that they're in a different landscape,
Mhm.
away from oppression and finding peace.
Wow. All the layers and symbolism, these artworks, you can just keep looking at and finding new details, and I suppose each viewer will take away different meanings or interpretations for themselves as well. But it's so interesting to hear you describe the different ideas, and I'm just imagining all the research and work that goes into
Yes.
putting these compositions together.
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that. I think
Mhm.
because these pieces are such a labor of love, they take me months at a time. and they
Mm.
are very large, and they're commanding in their presence. And so for me to have a lot of that symbolism and research is really integral, so that when someone comes, they may approach it and not know the storyline, but at least they can approach it and feel an essence of, the hard work and dedication that has gone
Yeah.
into it. So there's like an understanding that there's a lot to it.
Yeah. I just want to go back to what you were saying about rest and women and rest. And sometimes I think about art, if you've found the flow of making and experienced that joy of flow, that art making can be the perfect bridge between work and rest. You're sort of getting into a flow of making, your creative energy is flowing, but it doesn't feel laborious. It might feel challenging, but it doesn't necessarily feel like the grind of being at work. And I'm wondering if that's the case for you. Is art providing rest for you, or is it still really hard work and you find rest in other ways as an artist?
That's a great question. I think both. I think in tandem for both of those things, because it is really hard work. When I started creating, I was using the tufting machine as well.
Mhm.
In lieu of the punch needle, I was using both. And now I just use exclusively the punch needle. But it was very laborious. And actually, the motion of tufting back and forth for hours at a time was
Yeah,
was quite hard on my shoulders and my wrists.
yeah.
So in that essence, I did really have to take rest. Um, but the act of creating for me is a very spiritual one. It really
Mm,
is. And all of the ancestors that I call them, who are the women within my portraits, it is a very spiritual connection to my Jamaican and African lineage. And so that that making for me is very spiritual and very restful and very
mhm.
sacred. And so I really try to honor that, even though there is a pressure to make,
Yeah,
and to create once you're in the primary art market. The people
yeah,
want to see your work, and there is this pressure to produce. But for me, I really try and honor that um,
yeah,
balance.
yeah. Yeah, beautiful. What about, and perhaps I'll bring up one more image here while I ask this question. What about color? You spoke about the joy of color, and obviously we look through your images and we see that. We see the rich colors, we see this exploration of bright, bold, beautiful, vivid tones and jewel tones. Is color easy for you? Or is it something that you really have to sit and think and plan and work over and over and over?
Exactly that. It is
Wow.
definitely something that I have to sit and it's very contemplative for me because as you can see in this work, and for those who are listening, it is a very colorful work, but with very soft hues. It's a lot of purples and pastels, blues. It's the what's emoting here is calm and
Mhm.
relaxation, and that the unicorn and virtue are at peace. And so it is very intentional for me to study my color theory and to understand as well the vibration that these colors have together when nested together, because I'm not a painter, but the way that I use the punch needle is in a very painterly way.
Yeah.
And so it's really important because I can't mix the threads as a painter would their paints. The way that these yarns are going to nestle together is also a conversation. And so color is very serious for me and it's very
Yeah.
intentional. So yeah, I appreciate that question. It really
That's
is a
okay.
big dedication. Yeah.
We're looking for those who are listening, we're looking at the image Harmony Sings at Dusk from the Virtue. And this is perhaps Well, they're all quite elaborate, but this one is very much a medley of lots of foliage and animals and the woman central, and of course the beautiful unicorn as the focal point.
Yeah, the works before were very much more of a pan of a landscape. So you can get
Mhm.
the grandeur of their journey. And this last piece, it's almost like you zoom in a bit. You're kind of going into their nest, into the foliage where all of these animals have come to welcome the unicorn back after, all of these centuries of being away. And so they all have their eyes closed in rest, and they look
Yeah,
very much at peace.
they do. They do. And the colours in this one feel a little bit more restful and pastel, and it all works together beautifully.
Mhm.
So you've spoken a little bit about the technique, the punch needling, and I have a feeling our audience would be really curious to learn a little bit about that. I will play a video while I'm asking about this, and perhaps you can um, just explain the process a little bit, what punch needling is, how it works, for those who are unfamiliar. So I'll pop this video on if you'd like to just describe how it actually works.
Absolutely. So my frame is sits upright against the wall, and I use a singular piece of yarn at a time, and I use the hand punch needle. I use the Amy Oxford needle. It's a particular tool. And so you feed the yarn through the tool, and then you punch or poke it in and out of the monk's cloth, or I use primary rug warp. So it's a weave, but it's not such a tight weave so that it allows for the needle of the punch needle to go in and out. It's about a 3/4 of an inch of a depth. And so
Mhm.
the magical way in which it punches it in and out and leaves a raised loop on the other side, um, I think it's the way that the needle is shaped. It must have some sort of concave that gives just enough tension for the yarn to release, but then grab it back on the way back. It's quite
It
magical
seems
the way in which
magical.
this tool works. But
I've got one. I've never used it. I've got one. Part of the reason I haven't used it is I'm worried about how addictive it might be and everything else is going to go out the window. But I look at this thing and I'm like, I don't understand how this creates this
no,
magic.
it is beautiful magic, and
Yeah.
forewarned, you will be addicted if you start. You will,
Good
you
to know.
will.
Good to know.
Absolutely. It's really such a meditative a medium. It really is. And for me, I always start with my drawing. It's really important for me to have my portrait, my ancestor, with the gaze as to
Yeah.
which I'm trying to portray. So I draw that initially onto the surface of my loom, and then I work from there. But I'd like to leave a lot of room. Yes, you can see here, this is a piece I started called Olympia's Oasis. And this has a lot of context of Manet's famous
Yeah.
nude called Olympia. And
Yes.
there's African masks on the wall. So I'm thinking a lot about primitivism and reclamation of African artifacts. There's the black cat there for anyone who's done research into the Renaissance. And the black cat is really equated with femininity, but also with promiscuity as well. And so, kind of reclaiming that for this beautiful feline creature. And the setting is in a tropical landscape.
Yeah.
And so, this is the beginnings of my work. And this I did strictly hand punched, and it took me 4 months to complete this work from start to finish. I
Wow.
was really, really proud of this piece.
Yeah. While we're talking about the imagery and the technicality itself, I have a question. We have two Canadians in our team at Take Two, and they both provided some questions for you, Simone. So I might play Nick's question while we've got this image up on screen.
Sure.
Hey, Simone. I was wondering how you get your initial drawings onto the cloth, whether you use digital means or even a projector.
That's a very good question. So I tend to work digitally on my iPad. Sometimes I will do a collage beforehand as well, or a drawing, but then I will take a photo of that, and indeed I will project it onto my frame, which sits, very, very upright. And from there I use Sharpies and I just will trace that on. But because it is, a lot of the work can be done beforehand, but these works take so long to produce. I do leave a lot of room in terms of color, in terms of pattern. I leave
Mm.
a lot of room for that to play with throughout the days and my journey of creating
Mhm.
this piece. So it's not just all ready to go before I even start.
Yeah. I was wondering that um, how resolved your images and work are, and how much room there is for improvisation as you go, and how much detail you like to have planned in to a piece before you start the punch needling process.
I think for the most part, especially the ancestor, or the woman that's in the portrait, I like to have set within the gesture and the gaze, because I always start with the eyes. That's my starting point, is to start with the eyes and the face, to have
Mm-hmm.
that connection to the viewer. It's so important to me. And then I work from there. So I mean, I'm a very meticulous and detailed person, so I would hate to, put this up onto my frame and then want to change the entire thing. So it
Mm.
is pretty set from my intention going into it, but I
Yeah.
do leave a lot of room within like the color schemes and the patterns and things like that. But the gestures and the overall symbology and everything, symbology can be added in, and different iconographies can be added
Yeah.
in, but I don't usually, I won't like take things away,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
take a lot of time beforehand to research and to come
Yeah.
up with the imagery beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. It does, your work does look like there are a lot of mindful decisions that happen, imagery, symbols, color, composition, and I guess with the technique itself as well. Once you get going, you're going, right? You
That's right.
you want that fluid thing to happen so that you're covering space, and yeah, yeah, amazing. I had another question from Katie, who is based in Ontario.
Hi, Simone. My name's Katie. I'm wondering, which side of the piece do you actually use? Do you use the front, the tufted side, or do you use the back as your main um, artwork? Maybe you mix it up.
That's a very good question, and you have to be a punch needler to know this, or have used the tufting machine. So I will say the unicorn series that we spoke about earlier and that you've seen, those were all tufted on the back, but I used the front. So it did have the raised loops on the front, more plush, and I had to keep going to the front, you're right, to move the nodules of yarn around to make sure they had settled correctly. Now that I use exclusively the punch needle, I work on the back side. That also is the front side, because exactly that, it does allow for much more detail, in my opinion, because it doesn't have the high raise of the loop. It is quite flat. And so this piece, Olympia's Oasis, that you can see me working on in fast forward, is very much, so that is the front side that I will be presenting.
Amazing. I think that will be very useful for Katie to know. And Katie's actually our account manager who put you forward, Simone, as an artist that we should speak to. So
Thank you,
thank you
Katie.
to Katie. So I guess we can move on a little bit from the technical questions. And I'd love to chat to you next about portraiture. And this is a a subject close to my heart because many years ago I was a figurative painter. Well, I guess I still am, but I've just paused on the paintbrushes for now. And I would love to chat about portraiture and women in paintings or women in artwork. There's a very long history of women in painting as the subject matter. And I love what you're doing, bringing this textile art and the history of women in painting to a whole new level. And you're doing it completely differently. But like you've said, with your Renaissance influences and you see lots of different references in your work. I'd love to understand how that history of women as the subject matter comes into play in your work and what you do with it, what you do differently with it.
Very cool question. I think for me, having studied with my second degree in the fine arts, and that was a huge focus was the Renaissance and Art Nouveau. And I was very much enticed and enraptured with portraiture and portraiture specifically of women. And taking Art Nouveau, for example, and looking at Alphonse Mucha's work and the women that he produced were just so sensual and alluring and beautiful. And for me, you know, really spending a lot of time in my education on this era, but then not feeling seen. There wasn't a mirror for me and for Black identity. And so that's why, very particularly, a personal journey of mine is to build a sisterhood, to be connected to the Black diaspora as a mixed race Black woman, to know how far the journey of my ancestors have come from Africa to, you know, um, slavery in Jamaica and then migrating to Canada. And so for me, it speaks wonders to be able to create these portraits and to envision them as my ancestors. And I very specifically will use that black sparkly metallic thread that don't always emulate well from the photos, but if you see them in person, it's just this, it's like you could put your hand into it with the metallic wrapped around the black thread. It
Yeah.
feels like celestial beings, like you could just
Yes.
embrace them. It's really quite something. And yeah, for me, all of these painters, Alphonse Mucha, the Renaissance painters, they were all white men who were
Yes.
really depicting the vulnerability, the mystery, the nuance of women. And so for me, it's just really important to move that forward into a modern day romance of Black womanhood and womanhood in general, and especially as Black women, to show our vulnerability and the softness and the grace and the power that, is the complexity of being a woman.
Is there, I guess when we start out as children, we draw figures and we draw them with line on white paper, don't we? But what you do is the opposite. You are filling in the space with black and you're using white line. Is that an intentional part of representing black skin and Black women?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And actually, I'll take it a step further. It comes from my romance of printmaking. And when I started in school, I was doing lino cuts. And so for me, having that, using those contoured lines to
Yes.
depict, the musculature and everything in the face and the skin, um, that is where that came from. But when you're in printmaking, the lino cut that you're working on is called the matrix. And from there, you use the matrix to print on the paper time and time again. And so that was really quite poignant to me to think about ancestry and where we come from. And so
Yeah.
I used that technique that I used in printmaking, but the actual essence of, you know, I am a legacy of those who came before me. And so that technique is a lot deeper for me in the way in which
Yes.
I use it
Yeah.
to depict my ancestors in my textiles.
Yeah. let's have a look at a couple of images. I'm trying to pick the right one to show in relation to what you're speaking about, but let's give it a go.
Sure.
So here is She Holds the Sky, which I think speaks to what we're talking about with the black and the white and showing the musculature and the contouring. And I have a couple of other portraits that I can show. Here is a series called Belonging, and we'll zoom in on one. Just fabulous, strong image. Would you like to speak to this artwork, Simone?
Yes, absolutely. This piece is conceptually part of a lot larger body of work called the Belonging series. And this work itself shows a beautiful Black goddess with her hair ornately done, wrapped in red thread. They're braids that stick in every which direction. And she has a halo around her head made of gold thread. And if you were to see this in person, it's metallic thread, so it's quite shiny and beautiful. And the iconography in the background, you have orange slices with a pink background. And for me, it's just portraying the lushness of Caribbean culture, and the iconic triangular shape that is made up behind her is very symbolic of Art Nouveau, and particular to Alphonse Mucha and the way in which he would frame his work. And so that is something that I've integrated into my style, which I call Black Nouveau. And this is one of the series. And I made this at a time coming out of COVID-19, and I think we were all feeling the repercussions of the isolation and the disconnect. And for me, a major part, going back to your previous question, of portraiture is to make that connection, and to have that connection. And for me, that series in particular was about building a sisterhood and a coming together. So it was very comforting for me to do these individualized portraits that they each had their own character and their own flair. And that really is, a coming together, a sisterhood, a comfort, and showing different grace and power and
Yeah.
poise.
Yep. Yes, that word poise is such a consistent theme in the images of your women. A lot of them are looking directly out at the viewer, and they look confident and grounded. And I think poised is, I also had regal in mind.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
And I
Yes.
see all the historical references, but I also see, and I guess to some extent, fashion photography carries some of these ideas forward too. I mean, if that was sort of a very modern translation of some of these old references as well, I see, and I think it's also the color and the stance and the confidence of the women. I think I also see that kind of
Oh, absolutely.
inspiration.
And a lot of my inspiration comes from online. It comes
Yeah,
from magazines. It comes from like that fashion editorial photography that you talk about, and Pinterest. And so it
yeah,
is like this beautiful milieu of Black women that I'm accessible online, and even going back to the pandemic. And we
yeah,
all had this newfound appreciation for the ability to connect online. And so
yeah,
when I'm doing my collage work, it is often that of splicing and collaging different parts
mhm,
of the Black body together to create
yeah,
the gesture that I want, with a hairstyle, a gaze, you know, um,
yeah.
what they're wearing, the body position, all of that. So,
So it's not one specific model or person that you use. It's a compilation of all of these ideas. Yeah,
yes, yes.
beautiful, beautiful. Um, let's move on. I wanted to chat to you about how you bring together. You've talked a little bit about your Canadian Jamaican African roots. And I think we produce at Take Two, we produce art courses, online art courses. And one of the things that I think our students are always interested, or perhaps any artist, maybe it's a universal question, is bringing your identity and expressing your identity in its own unique way. And I'm always interested to really dive into that with artists in these interviews and how they actually do that, how they break it down or how they pull in these references in the process. I have some work that I'll show in relation to this conversation. I'm hoping I've got the right work for this, but let's roll with it and see how we go. There's a series called Channeling Caravaggio. And this, I think this body of work, to me, seems to exemplify how you are expressing your identity and bringing together these different references or different, your heritage into your work. So I'm showing a work called Girl with a Basket of Fruit and another work called Girl with Butterflies and Girl with Birds. And again, we will link to these so that everybody can really spend their time with the images. And then finally, I think one of my favorites from this series, I've got a thing for snakes, Simone. So
yes, same.
This one, She Manifests Her Destiny.
Yeah.
And are these works a good one to speak to around how you actually pull together and express the identity?
Absolutely. And I think to be fair, any one of my works is that, because it is an ongoing quest for that connection. And for me, that kinship with my ancestry and also with the sisterhood. And so thinking about channeling Caravaggio, it is really a nod to the pre-Raphaelite movement and to these portraiture that do show women who are so regal, but also soft and vulnerable in a way. And I wanted to team it with animals, and there's the one that's teamed with fruit. The one teamed with Girl with a Fruit Basket, that one is a direct mirror of Caravaggio piece, and that's Boy with a Basket of Fruit. And so when we talk about identity, for me, you know, when I started this journey from the theater world into visual arts, it was like when people do visual arts, sometimes they step outside of themselves and they're like, what do people want to see? What do people think is good? And for me, I think I abandoned that notion as a mature student going back to do my visual arts, and I looked deeper, having my theatrical roots. It's like, what do I want to see? You know, I have this love for this very whitewashed colonial, like artistic era. I love the Renaissance. I love Art Nouveau. And there's something about the romance and the passion of it. But that's a huge part of my identity that is missing from that, a huge part of who I am. And so, what can I bring to this for my love for the Renaissance? And it's like, well, I'm going to bring my blackness into this and bring our softness and our grace and our stories. So, when you look at something like Girl with a Basket of Fruit, you can see that it is referring to a historical artwork, but there are women who exemplify this today in the Caribbean, who are very much a part of who I am and who my family is and my ancestry is. And you know, she's rocking these beautiful dreadlocks and gold hoop earrings and a nose ring like I have. And so I think I'm just um, very unabashedly putting things that I love into my work and putting iconography in my own research as to what I want to see in the world. And so I think that when people are producing art, it is identity. It is who you are. It really is. You can't separate it. And so I just really I try to lean in um, to my voice and to making an impactful statement with my work.
And is that through, to do that, is that stillness, or is it journaling? It sounds like you do lots of research as well, obviously pulling in references. But when you're in your studio or you're in the process of developing ideas for a work, what is it you're doing when you have that moment of, like, that's how I connect the dots?
That's very interesting. I think I do like to go to the library, and I will I'll get a boatload, armful of those historical books that are so large and heavy. Be carrying 50 pounds of, Leonardo da Vinci's and the Renaissance and all these different artworks. And so I really love to look through those, because I love the gestures from that era. They're
Yeah.
just so romantic and heartbreaking, and they really talk about emoting, what that what is experienced there, and a lot of it stems even further into Greek mythology as well. And so that's a big part of it. Reading, I'm very aware to read Black female artists. I'm really into Octavia Butler right now, who was one of the first African American science fiction novelists, and she is just a prophet from her age. And so those are very beautiful. Toni Morrison, and Toni Morrison's work is very poetic. And so I think I write a lot of poetry as well. So in my series that I did, the Ancestral Body series, in 2021, I wrote a poem about the cosmos and creation. And from there, different lines of that poem inspired another work. And so there's multitude of ways in which I am inspired, but I also think, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it is about rest and not trying to grind these
Yeah.
ideas, right? It
Yeah.
is about walking my dog or going for a run or having a day of watching movies. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to realize that being creative, it doesn't, I mean, it takes rigor, but it also, you need to nurture it. And it is a very sacred thing that sometimes
Yes.
takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in all of these things you're describing, there's a slowness and a stillness. So even if it's not sitting and meditating, it's still allowing time and space to happen so that the
Yes,
idea can flow through.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. It's really interesting that I've heard you refer to your work as a medium of resistance, or but what you're saying about these references, you're not, it doesn't sound like that's the resistance. You actually are bringing these white history, colonial, or whatever they may be, references into your work because you love them. You want to celebrate them, and I'm not sure what the right phrase would be, not put your stamp on them, but also have some ownership of them, make them something that reflects you, that speaks to you. Is there resistance in your work? Is your work political or subversive in any way?
That's a very good question. And, you know, the one thing I have to say about that is, historically, the Black body, and in particular, the female Black body, is political and has been politicized. And in so many ways, it is a political subject. And even today, women's bodies in general are political, and our autonomy and our right to choose, etc. It's always something that is political. And for me, when I go into creating my work, it's not in the forefront of my mind, but that notion of protect Black women, that notion of our right to choose, that notion of how far we've come and where we are and how much further we have yet to go, is also very sacred, and that is a form of resistance. And I love the medium that I use because it's so soft and it's so
Yes.
tactile. So I
Yeah.
love that duality of having a very powerful statement in this very soft and colorful texture.
Yes, it often comes up in interviews. It's very interesting to me is the elevating these art forms that were traditionally craft forms or domestic crafts. That's a statement in itself
Yes,
where we're taking this thing, we are owning it, and we are putting it on walls.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
even the journey, which is a huge influx as of late, but textiles as a fine art medium
Mm,
as well, right? And bridging that gap between
yeah.
craft and the fine art world. And so, yes, there's a lot of resistance in this work.
Yeah, I think so. You're taking Renaissance or Western European references, you're adapting the imagery, you're reproducing it in something that is, yeah, like I said, perhaps traditionally considered a domestic or a women's craft, and you're making it incredible fine art at the same time. It's
And
quite
it's
something.
and it's also an homage to my lineage too. Like my real appreciation for Art Nouveau is, Austrian, and that is also my heritage.
Right.
Is
Okay.
Austrian, so it's also for me that combination of my identities and coming together from the
Yeah.
Vienna succession and all of
Yeah.
these things. And so it
Yeah.
is. When you
Okay.
ask about identity, it is very much um, a constant quest and exploration of that.
Yeah. Let's look at I've got a work here called The Four Queens, where I think you are um you are inspired very heavily by that Art Nouveau movement. Would you like to describe these works?
Yes, absolutely. So these four works are a direct mirror of Alphonse Mucha's Gemstones series, and it's four women in various postures, um, very alluring, very mysterious, very vulnerable and soft, but yet powerful at the same time. Flowing dresses, just beautiful, hugging their curves. And for me, I brought a lot of color into these pieces. So we're seeing it from afar, but if we were to zoom in, there's a lot of symbolism and iconography within each one of these pieces that are in tandem with the lyrics of Black empowerment that are really
Yeah.
front and center in these pieces. So from left to right, we have Black power, Black dreams, Black magic, and then Black love. And each one of these pieces corresponds to the queens that are behind them. And so Black power has the Queen of Diamonds. Black dreams has the Queen of Clubs. There's a clubs tattooed on her rib cage there. Black magic is the Queen of Spades, which is etched on her throne, her chair there. And then Black love and the Queen of Hearts behind her is holding a gemstone of a
Oh,
heart that she's
wow.
holding in her hand. And so these pieces I made in 2020, which was the height of the Black Lives Matter movement
Yeah.
across the world,
Yeah.
globally. And so for me, it was very important to use my voice and to have this statement. And so that that those chants of Black empowerment that were, being protested far and wide, was something that I embedded within these works, and they're very colorful, very bejeweled. They have almost a tarot card essence to them, very, very
Yeah.
powerful qualities.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for describing that. And these were shown at the Textile Museum of Canada. Was that the first time you've had work in an institution like that?
No, this was actually a touring show of mine. So the first show was here in my local hometown in Calgary called Contemporary Calgary, and I had my inaugural show called Unity, there. And so it started there, and then the works traveled to Toronto at the Textile Museum of Canada.
Wow.
It was a beautiful show, and for me, which you can see, the queens were on a black wall, and so that's also something that was really important in that show, was that all of the walls be painted black.
Mm.
Contextually, just really amplified that notion of black empowerment, but also black behind the colorful textiles. I find that white sometimes can suck and reverb the quality of the vibrancies of the color, whereas
Yeah.
black just really shines it forward. And so it
Yeah.
was really an incredible experience to be emerging from the pandemic, where I was really just promoting my work online. So people were seeing my work like this on their phones, and my work again is very large scale. And so this was the first opportunity for me to really showcase my work. And it was just the most enlightening, beautiful experience to watch people engage with my work for
Mm.
the first time.
Yeah. Do you find different audiences in different places respond to your work differently? I'm not
No.
sure if you would stand there interviewing them.
Yeah, exactly. Just be a fly on the wall.
But do you find
Um,
there's a difference or
no,
no?
I don't. And I feel like that is really comes from my ambition. And like we've spoken about this whole time, the quality in which I put that emotion into the ancestors that I'm portraying, or the narratives around it. And so I really leave room, even though I put a lot of research into my works, I leave room for the viewer to engage with her on their own.
Mm.
And that is the power that I really imbue into my work, is that
Yeah.
it's like I'm creating my own my own sisterhood, really. And so they really have an entity of their own. And people, I love watching people engage with the work
Yeah.
and to bring their own experience. And so, yes, everyone has their own experience with the work. Um, and it's really, really beautiful. I can give one example of the Four Queens, and the one
Mhm.
on the end, Black Love. I was in the room, and someone very special to me, a Black woman, um, went and was engaging with the work, and she had tears streaming down her face. And she just said, like, this is so meaningful to me, because when I was a little girl and when I was misbehaving, my mom would shave my head as a form of discipline, right?
Oh, wow. Mhm.
And now, and at the time, she also was rocking a little afro. So she essentially had shaved her head, and was growing it back. And she said, "This is me now. This is empowering to me to see this, to see a bald-headed Black woman represented in this way, because this is who I am, like the phoenix
Mhm.
rising." And then someone else a week later engaged with that work, and they were a queer person, and they saw that being, that Black love, as a trans person. And it's not for me to dispute. Like, I think that that is the beauty of art, is that people can engage and
Yeah.
get they see a mirror to that,
Yeah.
to the work. And I find that really beautiful.
Yeah. Isn't that a fabulous idea that you can pour so much into the work yourself with the imagery and color and references and history and then someone can stand in front of it and it's like that impact doubles because they can see something different in all of that.
Yes.
The pink
Yes.
might mean something else to them. That leaf might mean something else to them. The
Yes.
animals, yeah, and that's such a beautiful thing that
And I
you've
think,
created.
thank you so much. And I feel like, um going back again to portraiture and identity. And I feel like that's what I'm vying for within the institutions on a global level, is to have the dynamism of different cultures and different peoples represented at these museums, so that when young children, or when people in general go through these spaces, um, they can identify with these different artists. It's not just the
Mhm.
same old, same old. So I think it's really important for, for me, for Black artwork to be shown in museum settings.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have a question from Nicola, and it's a broad question about your creative practice. I will hit play and we'll see how we go.
Hi, Simone. What is the most satisfying part of the process for you when creating it? Is it like the end bits where you're snipping those threads, or is it when people finally get to enjoy it and see it and give you a bit of feedback? I would love to know. Thanks.
That is a difficult one to answer because every spot that you mentioned, I was like, yes. I think the satisfaction of finishing, like drawing a piece and that's ready to go onto my frame, it's like, yes, I'm so excited about this work. All the research up until this point, so satisfying. So after I draw it on, like that week, I'm in it on my in my studio like 8 hours a day. I'm so into it.
Mm,
Um, and then from there, I think, um, you know, I take my work off and I bring it to the stretcher now to be stretched onto to wood. Beforehand, I used to hand stitch the edges and hang it by a wooden dowel, but just for the conservation of the work, just so it doesn't pull over time, I've started stretching it over wood frames. So we'll see how that goes. But I think by the end of when I've completed a work, I've been with it for so long that my criticisms kind of latch on a little bit. And so
mm,
having that release and then getting it back when it's been stretched, that is also a very satisfying
yeah,
and beautiful moment to engage with the work again. That is really something. And then before for 5 years, I was represented in New York, and now I have representation here in Canada. And so usually when I'm finished a work, I will send it off to the gallerist. And so you don't really know when you're going to see it again. And
mm,
I always lament that, but it also is a beautiful thing considering legacy. Um,
mm,
so when I do see it again, when these museums that have acquired my work, like I just had a work that was um, showcased, that is being showcased in the North Dakota Museum of Art.
mhm.
And to see photos of that work up again is really
Yeah,
beautiful because for me, automatically it transports back to that time of
yeah,
creating, of what I was thinking, of what was going on in my life, emotionally, in my relationships, etc., what's happening in the world. And that, for me, is always forever tethered to that work. And so
yeah,
it's always interesting to ponder, when am I going to see these works again and where?
yeah. They're off living their own life.
They are. Yes. Bits of my
Yeah,
soul and my heart just traveling the world. What else could I ask for? It's beautiful.
yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. And it's interesting. It sounds like in that process where you send it off to be stretched, you have a little break from it.
I do.
And that's the sort of breathing space. And when it comes back, it gives you a whole new energy again. And I suppose the same could be said for when they're off traveling and doing their own thing in different galleries. You see them again and
Exactly.
you've had a break and
Yes.
yep,
Yes.
that's
We
right.
meet
I know
again.
you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, how beautiful. We would be remiss not to mention that you've recently published a book. And I would love you just to talk a little bit about your book, and I'll bring up an image on screen.
Yes.
Um, this was just in the last few months, is that right?
That's right. This was just released in summer of 2025. It was a labor of love, several years in the making. My first book, my baby. It's a
Oh,
beautiful,
congratulations.
thank you. It's really quite a beautiful size. You can see it on the table there. It's a really nice handheld book to have on your coffee table or to gift to people. And the book itself encompasses 40 of my artworks from about 2020 to 2024. and 3 different series of my work, including the unicorn series that we spoke in depth about. And there are 3 essays written for each of those chapters, an interview with myself, and then 2 other very professional, very, reputable women who wrote essays of my work that I'm very, very excited about. And so, yes, that is available via my website, but more so, it's through the gallery, the institution that produced the book, which is
Yeah.
Contemporary Calgary. So on
Hmm.
their website, you can get the book Encompass the Galaxy.
Fantastic. Congratulations. We will link
Thank you.
to that in our show notes so that people can have a look and purchase one. How did it feel getting the book in your hands? Once it was, I don't know, did you get a box of them? You opened the box, you've got
I
a book all of a sudden? How did
I
that feel?
did. There was like 500 books that arrived
Oh,
to the gallery. So it was like there was like a multitude of boxes, and I unwrapped it. It was a little teary-eyed. There's a video of it on my Instagram as well for any of you who follow my Instagram, Simone Elizabeth Saunders. And it was a very momentous moment for me. Not only the labor and the dedication of producing the book, but also Mm, just for me to have this tangible item that is now a part of my legacy, and
yeah,
to have to peruse it all with my works and the details of the work. And it's a really beautiful thing to share,
yeah,
because my work takes so long. Not everybody will have the opportunity to acquire my work. And so this is a way for them to have a piece of my work in their home.
yeah, absolutely. Do you think much about your legacy?
hmm
Yeah,
Always. Yes. And I think that, you know, the heart and soul itself that I put into each of the works, and the dedication is that form of labor and gratitude that I put into the work, and in doing so, how much I honor who I am and who came before me, and honoring my ancestors. And so
yeah.
it's really this beautiful practice that I've
Mm.
created for myself. My studio is a very sacred space. I have a little altar space where I light incense and a candle, and
Wow.
it's become, yeah, it's reciprocity with myself and the ancestors to create this work. And so, again, when I spoke about museums and wanting the heads of those tables to be cultured and vibrant and people of color, and I think that that's very important, because um, I think uplifting myself as a mixed race Black woman, my voice, but other
Yeah,
people's voices, and having that legacy of my work in museums and collectors' homes. Um, I'm really proud of that.
yeah,
Really, really proud of that. And so I don't take that for granted, my ability to do this, the safety to do this,
mm,
the peace of mind, and the support, because
yeah,
I can't do it without the support of my partner, who helps me immensely, the
yeah,
support of my family, their encouragement. And people don't always have that,
yeah,
not that it's not without my own challenges and struggles, but um, yeah, I give gratitude a lot, and I
yeah,
think that's an important aspect of that too, is not to take it
yeah,
for granted.
yeah. What would you like, if ultimately a person or a young person or a young Black person or a young Black woman sees in your work, what would you like them to step away feeling or thinking?
Feeling seen,
Mm,
I think that is my most poignant connection, is
yeah,
to feel seen. hmm And
yeah,
there's no mountain too high. I think that we can get in our own way, but also there will always be people trying to get in our way, and to trying to pin one person down. And there's room for everybody to grow.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
have to remind myself of that too, because it's so true. We live in such a big world and we all have our own voices and our own dreams, and we're all have the ability to do that with the support and safety and, you know,
Yeah,
ambition.
beautiful. Such a beautiful response. Thank you, Simone. Got chills.
Oh, I love that.
We are coming to the end of our interview, but before we do, we have a segment that we like to do in these. It's called Every Artist Must. And it's a bit of a rapid fire. It switches things up a little bit, of a rapid fire round of questions. So we start a sentence with the words every artist must something, and then you repeat that and you complete the sentence.
Okay.
It's just spontaneous. There's no such thing as a wrong answer. Sometimes the wrong answers are the best answers.
Yeah.
But are you game, Simone, to have a little play with every artist must? Amazing.
Let's do it. I'm game. Okay.
All
Don't
right,
judge
let's
me.
go. Let's go. Every artist must own.
Every artist must own a sketchbook.
Every artist must create.
Every artist must create with intention and integrity.
Every artist must avoid.
Every artist must avoid, I don't want to say criticism because we get criticism, but being deterred by criticism.
Every artist must learn.
Every artist must learn how to grow and how to continue to grow.
Every artist must remember.
Every artist must remember that you are unique, you are special, and you have your own voice.
Beautiful. One more, just for you. Every punch needle artist must.
Every punch needle artist must have patience and perseverance and use all the colors in your thread wheel.
Amazing. You did so well.
Pressure. Pressure.
Oh, thank you so much, Simone. This has been such a rich and inspiring conversation. I'm really thinking about pulling that punch needle out, having a go.
I encourage you to do so. I really encourage you. It's a beautiful medium. And I really want to thank you for having me. It was a really nice conversation.
Thank you so much. And let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye for now.